Hey everybody, welcome back to Jeff Bowl Central. We're checking out Avowed today. Avowed. This is Obsidian's kind of first big jump into the Xbox Game Pass, Microsoft ownership, Bethesda buyout space. And as such, it's kind of let's just say it bluntly. It's intended to be, or it is perceived to be by the gaming community as a knockoff Skyrim. I don't know that that's completely fairly earned, because it does divest or diverge from the Skyrim formula in some pretty key ways. But it's also kind of fair, right? I mean, if you just look at this footage here, if you know anything about the game, or if you're playing it right now yourself, you know that it's kind of Skyrim-esque, okay? It's kind of in the same vein of the open world action RPG, first person fantasy driven thing. And that's what it is. So it is fairly Skyrim-esque, but it's not entirely Skyrim-esque. But that doesn't really matter, because we love Skyrim, don't we? Don't we? We all appreciate Skyrim. We all appreciate Elder Scrolls. We would love that new Elder Scrolls game, Bethesda, by the way. The real question is it any good? Which is the question of any game review, of any kind of review. Is it any good? It's not horrible, and it's not great, which makes it, what? Average. Mid. And I've been seeing a lot of feedback from kind of some stuff I've been doing with my Jeff Bowl Central community here on YouTube and on TikTok, but also just the wider gaming world, because I don't really have a huge community at the moment yet. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of people who do like it, and there's some people who like it a lot. But most people seem to think it's kind of a knockoff-ish kind of thing, like I was alluding to, kind of just mid, right? Just kind of average. And I'll go ahead and echo that. There's a few things about it that make it slightly better than you may be expecting it to be. First of all, it is big and it is wide open, and the story is, okay. It's not horrible at all. And actually, if you went back to Skyrim today, you might discover that some of the beats in that were maybe not as excellent as we all quite remember. But then again, you might not, because it's like there is a certain scope and grandeur to Skyrim that this game just completely lacks. There is a certain ambition in the Elder Scrolls series that this game just doesn't seem to have. It's very straightforward. It's very by the numbers. It's very beat for beat. You're not really going to get surprised. And even once you get the combat down, that doesn't really diverge from each other, the different types of combat, very much. The weapons perform differently, and the bright spot, the single brightest spot of this game is in fact how it plays on a moment-to-moment combat basis. And this is where it shines against Skyrim. If we have to go there, if we have to compare them directly, which you don't have to, but if you're gonna. Let's say Skyrim. Skyrim was made in 2011, okay? That was 14 years ago. This is made in 2025, and we've updated our first-person gameplay. Our Call of Duty has revolutionized everything. Battlefield, anything that really made it faster, kind of run and gun thing. They've incorporated some of those ideas into this. Okay, there's a dodge mechanic, a very strong dodge mechanic. There's a fun running mechanic, running and sliding, vaulting, parkour. There's a little bit of parkour in this game. It's faster than Skyrim. It moves more fluidly, and that carries over to combat. It carries over to basic movement. You may be bored with any number of things in this game, but I dare you to be bored in the middle of a really heated exchange where you're seconds away from dying, but you pull it off. And that happens all the time. It is maybe slightly challenging when compared against something like Skyrim. But I have another comparison I want to make. How about Outer Worlds? Outer Worlds is another franchise created by Obsidian, and it's another quote-unquote, not to be cruel or judgmental, because I keep them coming, man. Keep those Outer Worlds games coming. Kind of a knockoff of another Bethesda property, which is to say Fallout. And the thing about Outer Worlds, though, now follow me here. Compare Outer Worlds now to Avowed. And that's a little stark too. That's a little night and day too, if you ask me. Because whereas Avowed is very by the numbers and quality, Outer Worlds was quality and interesting. Slightly more unique, slightly more colorful. And maybe that's because they were kind of aping the Fallout thing, and maybe that's because they were comfortable with the Fallout thing, because after all, Obsidian is famous for having made Fallout New Vegas back in the day, back on the 360 PS3 era, and that's considered widely one of the best Fallout games ever made, if not the best Fallout game ever made by some, right? So they knew that formula, they knew that genre, and man, did they nail it with Outer Worlds, and Outer Worlds 2 is coming, and I could not be more excited, and I was very excited for Avowed, and I'm not entirely disappointed. I think that it's a quality game. I just think that there's certain things, there's a certain rounding off of features, of ideas. For instance, there's no thievery. There's no assassination plots or assassination storyline. The storylines don't, you know, do you remember in Skyrim how a side story was still like a 10-hour long story campaign, or like a little mini campaign? These things fall off immediately. They drop off the map as soon as you start it, it seems. You know, there's other things about it. There's no horseback riding, for instance. There's not a lot of alchemy. There's not a lot of cooking. There's a little. There's not a lot of lock picking. Even is not even a thing. You just hold down the button and it picks a lock instead of having a little mini game. You know, there's no crafting of components in a complex, ordered, tiered way. The skill tree is not as interesting as the cool constellation structure of Skyrim. So you see what I'm saying? It's a rounding off of features. The story is not as interesting. There's not the dynamic ideas. There's not the big, cool, epic moments. Like, here's another thing from Skyrim. Do you remember climbing that mountain? All those steps up that mountain to talk to the Greybeards. And when you finally got up there, you felt like you were on a pilgrimage. You had to fight a damn Yeti on the way, or whatever the hell that thing was, a troll. Yeti.
It's like a creature out of Greek mythology.
So that's what I'm saying. It is in the vein of Skyrim, but it is not as good as a mainstay Elder Scrolls game. If you've got Game Pass on the Xbox, you should play it. It's worth that. It's worth probably buying if you're into the genre. I wouldn't say it's not. But here's another thing. Compare it to Outer Worlds, number 1. It is not as good as Outer Worlds. So if I gave Outer Worlds like an 8 out of 10, I'd be happy to give, and Skyrim, for instance, would be like a 9 or a 10 even out of 10. Maybe not quite at launch because you had weird shit happening with that. So if I'm going to give Outer Worlds an 8, Skyrim a 9 or a 10, Avowed gets from Jeff Bull Central a 7 out of 10. And I think that that's pretty fair. Maybe, depending on how your mileage is varied on this, too generous, not generous enough. Again, like my rating system, okay, 1 to 3 or 4 is bad. 4 to 5 or 6 is average. A little bit above that is slightly better than average. So I call it good, okay? Not excellent, not great, not bad, not quite average, slightly better than average. And that's where I place it, 7. Slightly better than average. So I would check it out if you have Game Pass, or if, like I said, you're a fan of the genre. But if you do not have Game Pass, if you've got to pay bare minimum $70 for this game and you're not a fan, a big fan of the genre, then you can probably skip it. And I would say be patient and wait for Outer Worlds 2 from Obsidian, because I think there's a strong chance that might rock your socks a little bit better than does Avowed, or than will Avowed, if you haven't played it yet. You get me, man? Huh? You picking up what I'm laying down, man? Okay. That's it, baby. That's it, everybody. Like, subscribe, buy yourself a milkshake, suck it down, come on back, watch some more videos. Boy, I want a milkshake.